Huawei's CFO,孟晚舟, has been held under house arrest in Canada for much of the last 2 years. She is now back in court, and I think that we are very close to receiving a final verdict from the judge to determine if she will be extradited to the US to face the charges that have been brought against her by the US state of New York. And in this video I'm going to be talking about why I believe that孟晚舟is innocent, will be released and allowed to return back home to China. I'll be using her English name in this video, which is Sabrina Meng. Hello and welcome back to the Barrett channel. If you've not been here before, my name's Lee and I run this channel with my son Ollie. Together we cover the topics of food and travel, technology and also opinion pieces, so there's something for everyone. Okay, so there are a number of key points to the Sabrina Meng trial and I'm going to discuss them one by one. So HSBC said that they were misled with regards to the PowerPoint presentation and said that they were not aware that Huawei was doing business with an Iranian company and potentially exposing them to apparent risks. However, according to the evidence from Ms Meng's lawyers, this allegation is false. The US lawyer said that Ms Meng claimed that Skycom was not under Huawei's control due to the company being sold to a third party. This third party being Canacula Holdings. Huawei controlled Canacula's finances, and a bank official responsible for risk assessment was well aware that Canacula was controlled by Huawei. So HSBC were aware that Skycom had been sold to Canacula, and also that Huawei controlled Canacula's bank accounts, and hence Huawei continued to control Skycom. So it's plainly clear that HSBC knew all the time that Huawei controlled Skycom. So therefore Ms Meng did not mislead HSBC and therefore cannot be held responsible for any errors in processing of funds that HSBC may have made. Now, regarding the meeting between Sabrina Meng and HSBC, this meeting took place in 2013 and is the key event in this entire case. HSBC has said that they were misled during a PowerPoint presentation and that the HSBC employee who was dealing with Ms Meng was not in a senior position and that he did not have a deep knowledge of the situation. When in fact the HSBC employee dealing with Ms Meng was Alan Thomas, who is the Deputy Head of Global Banking for the Asia Pacific region. Certainly not a junior position. Alan Thomas met with Ms Meng in a Hong Kong restaurant in the IFC Tower. Now you need to remember, Sabrina Meng is the CFO of Huawei, China's largest tech company and one of the largest in the world. Her time is very valuable and Huawei were one of HSBC's largest global customers. So to me it's very unlikely that HSBC would send a junior employee to meet with her. It's pretty obvious that they would send a senior executive that had a good understanding of Huawei's business. So HSBC's claim that only a junior employee was aware of the situation is also, I believe, false. Next, I want to talk about what happened when Sabrina Meng landed at Vancouver Airport on December the 1st, 2018. As the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the CBSA, Canadian Border Services Agency, prepared to arrest Ms Meng, there was already an arrest warrant issued for her. However, the key point here is that the arrest warrant was for immediate arrest. The warrant didn't say interrogated for a few hours, then maybe arrest her. The warrant said immediate arrest. So officers from RCMP should have intercepted Sabrina Meng as she was leaving the plane, immediately informed her that she was under arrest and read her rights to her. However, this is not what happened. Instead of arresting her, RCMP officers took her to immigration where she was questioned by officers from CBSA. Her laptop, cell phone and iPad were taken from her and she was asked to write down the passcodes for those devices. CBSA officers are quite within their rights to ask for this information. They also have the power to confiscate electronic devices, but only if there is any question concerning Ms Meng's entry into Canada. But this is where it gets interesting, as Sabrina Meng was only in Vancouver Airport while transiting on a flight to Mexico City. She had no intention to enter Canada. Mexico City was her final destination, not Canada. Also, something else of note is that the arrest warrant was issued against Miss Meng for criminal activity. And it's illegal for CBSA to confiscate electronic devices for criminal reasons. They can only confiscate these devices based on their admissibility to enter Canada. And as I've just mentioned, she was not at any time intending to enter Canada. She was merely transitioning through a Canadian airport. And one final point before I move on. When Sabrina's electronic devices were confiscated from her, they were placed into Faraday bags. Now, these are a special type of bag that stops any outside interference from affecting the devices inside of them. So data on these devices cannot be remotely erased. Now, the most interesting part is that it's not normal practice for the Canadian Border Services Agency to use these type of bags. So why did they use this? Why did they use them this time? Was it under instructions from the FBI? We know from evidence already given that there were a number of exchanges between Canadian authorities and the US FBI on the day of the arrest. The next point I'd like to talk about is Ben Chang. Ben was a senior RCMP officer who was involved in this case. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and this is something that really rings alarm bells for me, as there are allegations that he was working directly with the FBI and that he was responsible for sending information from Sabrina's phone, iPad and laptop to the FBI at the time of or shortly after her arrest. Ben Chang, however, has refused to testify. In fact, he has now left the RCMP and has gone to live and work in Macau of all places, which, as you all know, is part of China. He's taken up a role as a high-level executive in the casino industry. Due to Ben leaving RCMP, he is no longer able to use the services of RCMP's lawyers, and as a result is refusing to return to Canada to testify. He's hired his own lawyer and has refused to make any statements about the case whatsoever. This all seems very strange indeed, and Heather Holmes, Associate Chief Justice, has said, "I will take judicial notice of this." She then goes on to say that generally retired police officers testify in cases they were involved in before they retired, and that's not happening here. As Ben Chang was a senior officer in this case, it really does start to ring alarm bells in my head why he refuses to testify. And I really have no idea why, but all notes, messages, emails of Ben Chang have now been destroyed. That's a lot of evidence that no longer exists. To me, destroying evidence of an RCMP officer in such a high-profile case like this seems very suspect, and surely there must be negligence on the part of RCMP here. Another point that Sabrina's lawyers are questioning is the jurisdiction of the USA in this case. Do the USA actually have any jurisdiction to enforce these criminal charges against Sabrina? Let's have a look. So Miss Meng is a Chinese national. Huawei is a Chinese company. HSBC is a UK bank. So exactly how are the USA involved? Well, the only reason why the USA are involved in all of this is that HSBC used the US to clear the US dollar transactions. But surely this is nothing to do with Huawei or Sabrina Meng. Surely it's down to HSBC to decide how and where transactions are cleared. Previously, HSBC have been caught laundering billions of dollars for Mexican drug cartels. For this, they were fined a sum of $1.9 billion by the US Justice Department, but not one employee of HSBC was either detained or charged for these offences. So arresting Sabrina Meng is absolutely unprecedented, and I think it goes to prove that Sabrina's arrest is really just for political reasons. We all know how the USA are trying to apply as much pressure as they possibly can against Huawei, cutting off a number of their suppliers, blocking their equipment from being used in the USA, as well as bullying other countries into not using Huawei equipment. The former President Trump even said that he would consider authorising their release if he thought it would help him get a better trade deal with China. And the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also said that she should be part of any USA-China final trade deal. And there's no doubt in my mind that Sabrina's arrest was definitely a political move. The claims against her are really very flimsy. And this, together with the abuses of her rights by the Canadian authorities, I really feel that the only decision the Associate Chief Justice Heather Holmes should make is to turn down the request by the USA for the extradition of Sabrina, so she's free to return to China. As of today, the case is still ongoing, and it's likely the case will continue until late April or early May, when a final decision will be made. And if there's any further important updates, I'll post them on our Twitter account. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, consider subscribing. I'll put the link in the description below. I'd really be interested in hearing your thoughts and comments on this case, so please do leave your comments below. Anyway, that does bring me to the end of this video. I'd really like to thank you for spending your time today listening to what I had to say. Hope that you found it interesting. You can look forward to much more content in the future from the Barrett channel. But as always, for now, take care.